It started on a rainy Wednesday evening. Ethan returned home earlier than usual after a canceled meeting and found the house unusually quiet. Claire was in her art studio, a small converted shed in their backyard where she spent hours painting. Ethan wandered into the living room, dropping his briefcase on the couch. On the coffee table sat Claire's phone. The screen lit up with a notification. Message from Mark Langley. Ethan frowned. Mark Langley was their 62-year-old neighbor, a retired professor who had lived next door for years. Mark was known for his quiet demeanor, often tending to his garden or tinkering with woodworking projects in his garage. Curiosity piqued, Ethan unlocked Claire's phone using her familiar passcode. What he found left him frozen. Mark, last night was incredible. I wish we could have more time like that. Claire, me too. I feel alive again when I'm with you. Ethan stared at the screen, his chest tightening as he scrolled further. The messages were laced with innuendo and references to stolen moments, late-night rendezvous, and intimate confessions. He sank onto the couch, the realization hitting him like a freight train. Claire, his wife of 15 years, his partner through thick and thin, was having an affair with Mark Langley, their elderly neighbor. Ethan's hands trembled as he placed Claire's phone back on the coffee table. He felt a strange combination of disbelief, anger, and disgust. Mark Langley, his quiet, retired neighbor who baked cookies for the block party and shared gardening tips, was the last person Ethan would have suspected of betraying him. Claire's footsteps interrupted his spiraling thoughts. She entered the living room, a paintbrush in her hand and a streak of blue paint smudged on her cheek. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice cheerful. Ethan forced himself to remain calm. "Yeah, the meeting got canceled." Claire smiled and leaned over to kiss him, but Ethan turned his head slightly, her kiss landing on his cheek. Claire's brow furrowed. "Everything okay?" she asked. Ethan nodded, though his mind was screaming. "Yeah, just tired." But his gaze lingered on her longer than usual, searching her face for clues, signs of guilt, or hesitation. Claire seemed oblivious, humming softly as she returned to her studio. The seed of suspicion. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Claire lay beside him, her breathing steady and peaceful, while his mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? What had driven her to betray him? Ethan thought back to moments that had seemed insignificant at the time. Claire offering to drop off baked goods at Mark's house, the way she occasionally laughed a little too hard at his jokes during neighborhood gatherings, the extra time she spent in her art studio, claiming she needed inspiration. Was it all connected? By morning, Ethan had resolved to find out. The gathering storm. Ethan started with Claire's phone. While she showered, he scrolled through her messages again, taking screenshots of the conversations and saving them to a hidden folder on his laptop. The texts painted a vivid picture of the affair. Claire and Mark had been meeting for months, sneaking around under the guise of errands, art supplies runs, and walks in the park. One message in particular made Ethan's blood boil. "Mark, I've never felt this way before. You're the best thing that's happened to me." Claire, "Me too. It feels so right, even if it's wrong." Ethan closed the phone and sat in silence, his hands balled into fists. Over the next few days, Ethan's anger turned into a cold, calculated determination. He began keeping a journal of Claire's movements, noting her excuses and the times she left the house. On Saturday, Claire announced she was heading to the craft store to pick up supplies for a new project. Ethan pretended to be engrossed in the weekend paper, but quietly followed her once she left. He watched from a distance as Claire parked her car outside a small cafe. Minutes later, Mark arrived. The two embraced before heading inside, laughing and holding hands as if they had nothing to hide. Ethan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. His heart ached with betrayal, but he remained quiet, knowing he needed to gather more evidence before making his move. Confrontation. The breaking point came one evening when Claire was preparing dinner. Lily was in her room studying, oblivious to the storm brewing downstairs. "Claire," Ethan began, his voice calm but steely, "can we talk?" Claire looked up from chopping vegetables, her expression curious. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Ethan slid his phone across the counter, the screenshots of her messages with Mark displayed on the screen. Claire's face drained of color. "Ethan, I can explain. Explain what? Ethan interrupted, his voice rising. Explain how you've been sneaking around with Mark Langley, our neighbor? The man who brought us cookies for Christmas? Claire's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant to hurt you. Never meant to hurt me? Ethan shouted. You've been lying to me, to Lily, for months. And for what? For him? I was lonely, Claire sobbed. You're always working, and Mark, he made me feel appreciated. Ethan laughed bitterly. Appreciated? You destroyed our family for that? Claire broke down, but Ethan wasn't moved. His anger burned too deeply. The unraveling begins. Ethan's coldness toward Claire grew palpable in the following days. Their conversations were terse, and the tension in the house was impossible to ignore. Lily, though unaware of the affair, began sensing something was wrong. Are you and Mom okay? She asked Ethan one evening. We're fine, Ethan lied. Just going through a rough patch. But the truth was, Ethan was plotting his revenge. Would you like me to continue the expanded version of the next parts, ensuring all chapters are richly detailed to meet the 23,000 character target? The trap is set. Ethan Walker had always prided himself on being a patient man, but the betrayal he felt from Claire, and the audacity of Mark Langley, demanded action. He knew that confronting Claire wasn't enough. Her tears, excuses, and claims of loneliness only fueled his anger. He needed them both to feel the full weight of what they had done. His plan began with careful precision. Ethan spent nights crafting his revenge, meticulously laying the groundwork to dismantle both Claire's life and Mark's reputation. The neighborhood knows. Ethan started with a calculated strike, a mass email to their entire neighborhood association. The email was anonymous but detailed, including screenshots of Claire and Mark's incriminating texts, along with photos Ethan had discreetly taken of their meetings at the cafe. Subject line, Your beloved neighbor. The truth about Mark Langley. Within hours, the community buzzed with gossip. Mark, once seen as the kind and gentle widower, became a pariah. His neighbors stopped waving as he worked in his garden. Children who once visited him for cookies now avoided his house altogether. Mark confronted Ethan one evening as he was mowing his lawn. You did this, didn't you? Mark demanded, his face red with anger. Ethan killed the engine and stared at him coldly. What did you expect, Mark? You slept with my wife. It wasn't supposed to go this far, Mark said, his voice pleading. I care about Claire. Don't you dare say her name to me, Ethan interrupted, stepping closer. You destroyed my family. Now it's your turn. The public humiliation. Ethan wasn't done. At the next neighborhood block party, he made sure the humiliation was personal. He waited until the crowd had gathered, then raised a toast. To Mark Langley, Ethan began, his tone laced with sarcasm. The man who not only grows the best tomatoes on the block, but also managed to ruin a 15-year marriage. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Mark turned pale. Claire, who had reluctantly attended the event, froze, her face a mix of shame and anger. Ethan, stop, Claire whispered, pulling at his arm. But Ethan ignored her, his voice rising. Everyone here deserves to know the truth. My wife, Claire, and our dear neighbor Mark have been sneaking around behind my back for months. The silence was deafening as Ethan walked away, leaving Claire and Mark to face the fallout. Claire's desperation. The public exposure left Claire reeling. Her friends distanced themselves, her family expressed their disappointment, and even Lily began to pull away. Mom, why does everyone keep whispering about you? Lily asked one afternoon. Claire struggled to find the words. People are saying things that aren't true, sweetie. Is it about you and Mr. Langley? Lily pressed, her voice trembling. I heard Sarah's mom talking about it. Claire's heart broke. Lily, I made a mistake, she admitted. But I love you, and I'm trying to fix things. Lily's silence was a knife to Claire's heart. The divorce papers. Ethan filed for divorce, presenting the texts and photos as evidence of Claire's infidelity. He demanded full custody of Lily, arguing that Claire's behavior made her an unfit mother. During the proceedings, Claire's lawyer pleaded for leniency. Claire made a mistake, her lawyer said, but she's a devoted mother and deserves a chance to rebuild her relationship with her daughter. Ethan's rebuttal was sharp. She wasn't thinking about being a devoted mother when she was sneaking off with Mark Langley. Lily deserves better. The court awarded Ethan primary custody, leaving Claire devastated. Mark Langley's life was equally ruined. The scandal forced him to sell his home and leave the neighborhood. Rumors about his affair with a married woman followed him wherever he went, and his once peaceful retirement became a nightmare. Mark attempted to reach out to Claire, but she refused to take his calls. "You've done enough damage," she told him in a brief text. The collapse begins. Claire's life unraveled faster than she could grasp. She had lost her marriage, her standing in the community, and most painfully, the close relationship she once had with Lily. Living alone in a small apartment, Claire spent her days battling waves of regret and loneliness. Ethan, meanwhile, had channeled his anger into rebuilding his life. He focused on his career and Lily, determined to create a stable environment for his daughter. But even as he tried to move forward, the shadow of betrayal loomed over him, leaving him bitter and distrustful. Claire tried desperately to reconnect with Lily, who had grown distant since the divorce. She called every evening, leaving voicemails that often went unanswered. One afternoon, Claire waited outside Lily's school, hoping to surprise her. When Lily saw her, she hesitated before walking over. "What are you doing here, Mom?" Lily asked, her tone flat. "I wanted to see you," Claire said, forcing a smile. "Maybe we could grab ice cream?" Lily shifted uncomfortably. "I have homework. Maybe another time." Claire's heart sank as she watched Lily walk away. Though Ethan had won custody of Lily and gained a sense of justice through his revenge, his life was far from whole. He buried himself in work, but the long hours only amplified his loneliness. Marcus, his best friend, confronted him during a rare night out. "You've got everything you wanted," Marcus said. "So why are you still so angry?" "I'm not angry," Ethan replied, sipping his drink. "Really? Because it seems like you've been stuck in the same place since the divorce," Marcus countered. "You need to let it go, man. For your sake, and Lily's." Ethan didn't respond, but Marcus's words lingered. Lily, now a teenager, bore the weight of her parents' fallout. She excelled in school but avoided talking about her family, fearing the judgment of her peers. One evening, while Ethan was preparing dinner, Lily hesitated in the doorway. "Dad," she began, "do you think Mom's a bad person?" Ethan paused, setting down the knife he was using to chop vegetables. "Why do you ask?" "I don't know," Lily said, fidgeting with her sleeve. "Everyone talks about what happened, and it's hard to know what to think." Ethan sighed, crouching to meet her gaze. "Your mom made mistakes, but she loves you. That's something you should never doubt." Lily nodded, though her expression remained troubled. Mark Langley's life had spiraled into chaos. The once respected widower was now a disgraced outcast, unable to escape the whispers and judgment that followed him. One evening, Mark attempted to contact Ethan, hoping to make amends. Ethan answered the phone reluctantly. "What do you want?" Ethan snapped. I wanted to apologize," Mark stammered, "for everything. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I needed to say it." Ethan's voice was cold. "Apology not accepted. You ruined my family, and I'll never forgive you for that." Mark's voice cracked. "I didn't mean for things to get this bad. I didn't want to hurt anyone." "You didn't think about anyone but yourself," Ethan said before hanging up. "The children suffer most." As months turned into years, the emotional toll of the affair and its fallout became evident in Lily. She struggled to trust others, her parents' actions leaving a lasting impression on her relationships. During a therapy session Ethan had encouraged her to attend, Lily finally opened up. "I feel like I can't depend on anyone," she admitted. "My mom lied. My dad is always angry, and I don't know how to trust people anymore." Her therapist nodded. "That's a lot to carry, Lily, but recognizing it is the first step toward healing." Lily nodded, though she wasn't sure where to begin. A life in ruins. Years later, the fallout of Claire's betrayal and Ethan's vengeful actions left both of their lives in shambles. The once idyllic family they had built was a distant memory, replaced by regret, estrangement, and emotional scars that neither could heal. Ethan's initial triumph had long since soured. While he had achieved revenge and won custody of Lily, the satisfaction was fleeting. His anger, once directed at Claire and Mark, had turned inward, leaving him bitter and withdrawn. The high-stress demands of his job, combined with his emotional turmoil, eventually caught up with him. Ethan was passed over for a promotion he had worked tirelessly to earn, his boss citing concerns about his declining performance and erratic behavior. "You're distracted, Ethan," his boss said. "You need to get your head straight." Ethan nodded silently, though inside he felt the weight of his failures crushing him. For Claire, life after the divorce was a series of hardships. She worked 2 part-time jobs to make ends meet, her dreams of becoming a professional artist abandoned. The scandal surrounding her affair had followed her, making it difficult to find stability. Her relationship with Lily remained strained. Though Lily visited occasionally, their interactions were polite but distant, as if an invisible wall separated them. One evening, as Claire flipped through an old family photo album, she broke down in tears. "I had everything," she whispered to herself, "and I threw it all away." Now a young adult, Lily had forged her own path, determined to break free from the shadow of her parents' mistakes. She graduated from college with honors, securing a job in a different state to distance herself from the painful memories of her upbringing. Though she occasionally called Ethan and Claire, her visits were infrequent. "You're doing so well," Claire said during one of their rare phone calls. "I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom," Lily replied. Her tone was kind, but the closeness they once shared was gone. Mark Langley lived the rest of his life in quiet disgrace. After selling his home and moving to a small town upstate, he spent his days in solitude, haunted by the choices that had destroyed his reputation. One rainy afternoon, Mark wrote a letter to Ethan, apologizing for everything. He never sent it, fearing it would do more harm than good. Unexpected reunion. Years passed, and the wreckage of Ethan and Claire's marriage settled into the past. They had long ceased communication, except for brief and strained interactions involving Lily. Both had carved out isolated lives, nursing old wounds and quietly enduring the weight of their choices. A familiar face. It was a crisp autumn morning when Ethan, now 65, decided to visit a small coffee shop in the quaint coastal town he had retired to. The place was quiet, the kind of cozy spot he frequented to escape his thoughts. As he sipped his coffee, his eyes caught sight of a woman at the counter. There was something familiar in her posture, the way she brushed her hair behind her ear. It took him a moment to realize it was Claire. Ethan froze, unsure whether to approach her or slip out unnoticed. But before he could decide, Claire turned, her gaze locking with his. Her expression shifted from surprise to uncertainty, and then to a tentative smile. "Ethan," she said, her voice softer and older than he remembered. "Claire," he replied, his own voice carrying years of weariness. Claire hesitated before walking over to his table, her coffee in hand. "Do you mind if I join you?" Ethan gestured to the chair across from him. "Sure." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. "What brings you here?" Ethan finally asked. "I moved out this way a few years ago," Claire said, stirring her coffee. "Needed a change of scenery. What about you?" "Same," Ethan replied. "Retired a while back. Thought this place might be good for some peace and quiet." Claire nodded, her eyes scanning his face as if searching for traces of the man she once knew. Their conversation began with cautious small talk, weather, the town, retirement, but soon drifted toward the inevitable topic of their past. "Do you ever think about it?" Claire asked, her voice tinged with regret. "All the time," Ethan admitted. "It's hard not to." Claire looked down at her coffee. "I made so many mistakes, Ethan. I don't think I ever stopped paying for them." Ethan's jaw tightened. "We both paid for them. Lily paid for them." "I know," Claire said, her eyes filling with tears. "I think about her every day. About what I did to her, to us." "She's doing well, at least," Ethan said. "Married now. A good career. She turned out better than we did." Claire smiled faintly. "She's strong. Stronger than I ever was." A painful apology. Claire reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly. "Ethan, I know it's far too late, but I want to say I'm sorry. For everything. For the affair. For the lies, for how I hurt you and Lily. You didn't deserve any of it. Ethan stared at her hand for a long moment before nodding. I appreciate that. But forgiveness? I don't know if I'm capable of that anymore. I don't expect you to forgive me, Claire said softly. I just needed you to know. As they talked, the years of bitterness between them began to soften, if only slightly. They shared memories of Lily's childhood, moments of joy they hadn't thought about in years. Do you remember her first school play? Claire asked, laughing lightly. She forgot all her lines but still stole the show. Ethan chuckled. She had this way of commanding attention. Still does. For the first time in decades, they found themselves smiling together, the shared love for their daughter bridging the chasm between them. A quiet goodbye. When it was time to leave, Claire hesitated. It was good seeing you, Ethan. I didn't think I'd ever get the chance to talk to you like this. Same, Ethan said, his tone guarded but not unkind. As Claire walked out of the cafe, Ethan watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of closure and melancholy. They were two people bound by a broken history, their lives forever marked by the choices they made. And though the scars remained, their brief reunion offered a flicker of understanding, a reminder that even in ruin, there could be moments of connection. Thank you for listening to the story to the end. Please like, share your thoughts and subscribe to the channel.